Whether you're a collector, enthusiast, or just want a nice watch as a flex, it's hard to ignore the big daddy that is Rolex. Problem is, scrolling down your social media feed, you'll see the same Rolexes over and over again. Submariner dates, Panda Daytonas, Olive Day dates, Wimbledon Datejusts. Why is that? Because these are the most popular and iconic with cult-like followings, and that's why we keep seeing the same watches. The more you see the black sub date, the more you want it. Eventually you buy it, and so the hype cycle continues. In this Rolex catalogue, you'll find a total of 170 different specification combinations of watches that they sell, and that's excluding the many different dial colorways they offer for each of those different combos. That's well over 1,000 models available to choose from in this book, and yet we still obsess over the same 10. What this is then perhaps is a treasure trove of hidden gems for those unlike myself who've had the privilege of trying most of these watches in the flesh. They go unnoticed, unloved. Let's think outside of that box that you've been manipulated into feeling comfortable within and open our minds to the other 990 offerings in that book. I'm Vinny, welcome back. Rarity is often an alluring quality in the world of horology. As collectors, we crave that feeling of exclusivity, and thankfully there is a lot of diversity in the Rolex catalogue and alternatives to the watches that we know so well. Watches that you won't walk into your office Christmas luncheon and two of your colleagues are also wearing. So to kick this off then with the obvious one, the 126610 Allen Submariner date, perhaps one of the most iconic and well-known timepieces of all time, not even arguably. The secondary market value for a 2023 at the moment is around £12,000 and the retail sits at £8,650. Clearly a no-brainer at retail, but for most that secondary market price is what you will be paying. And why? Every man and his dog has one of these, and I've personally been delighted recently to see the resurgence of the Submariner No Date, a watch that will actually cost you £1,500 less on the secondary market. This is, I suppose, the obvious alternative and is apparently in much shorter supply. Rolex, rumour has it, produces far fewer of these annually than the Submariner dates, so you're getting more rarity, you're getting more exclusivity. Having had many of these pass through my hands, it is a design masterpiece. A great harmonic balance of symmetry on the dial, losing that obtrusive Cyclops lens and white date ring. The piece wears more slender, is more legible, and is just more pure. Now that would be the obvious one, but the less obvious one for me as an alternative to the Rolex Submariner date would be the Yachtmaster 40, and specifically with the blue dial. For around the same price on the grey market, you can pick up a 2023 Yachtmaster Blue Dial, which of course features platinum, the most scarce of precious metals used in watchmaking and perhaps the most expensive. Platinum has an elite status sitting at the top of the tree and is actually 10 times more scarce on Earth than gold. It's also perfect for the Islamic community as well, who want precious metal but prefer not to wear gold. Now, why have I chosen the blue dial over the rhodium dial? Well, of course, the rhodium dial is the hype watch. It's the one that over a year ago that sort of was at the peak of the market at £15,000 to £18,000. I never really understood why. Perhaps that baby blue seconds hand was what allured people to that watch. It is more of a smaller watch, I'd say. I mean, it's advertised at 40mm by Rolex. It's more of a 39. It wears as more of a 39. The case form is slender, it's sexy, it's curvaceous. It's certainly not the slab-sided chunk that the Submariner date is, so it almost feels like there's more attention to detail and design that's gone into this watch. But particularly for me, it's all about that dial. That dial, a blue dial on a Yachtmaster, a watch that's intended for yachting, for me seems perfect. It is a almost deep sea blue colour. Let's look at GMT Master 2 alternatives then. Of course, the ones that everybody wants is the Pepsi and the Batman. Now, if we look at a straight alternative to any of those on an oyster bracelet, for me, it has to be the Explorer 2, specifically on the polar white dial. Now, we recently had one of these in stock, and for quite a while I've slated this piece because this is supposed to be the 50th anniversary that Rolex supposedly improved improved, and at first glance, looking at pictures online, it didn't seem to be any different than the reference that came before it. In reality, this watch is totally different. It is almost perfect. Now, straight off the bat, the case form of this watch is quite slender. It isn't as chunky as you'd expect of a 42mm watch, but also those refinements that Rolex did with this new reference absolutely work for the whole proportional balance, I would say, of this piece. So what you have is a wider bracelet at the lugs that tapers down to a wider clasp. And that wider bracelet seems to integrate much better and flow much better into the case shape. So you've got less of a sort of maxi case and more slender, thinner case that integrates into that bracelet better, and therefore the whole thing wears better than the one that came before it. The contrast between the PVD black furniture of the dial and that white colour is polarizing, excuse the pun, and it functions perfectly as well as a simple 2 time zone true GMT. Except the fact that not many people are actually aware of with the Explorer 2, this isn't meant or intended to be a GMT. Perhaps explorers at the North or South Pole, where at certain times of the year have all day sunlight or all day darkness, that bezel was intended to indicate to the wearer whether they were in actual day or night hours. So what you would do would be set the GMT hand to exactly the same time as the location, and therefore be able to read off the outer ring a 24-hour scale. Retail on this is £8,100 versus £9,000 for a GMT steel on Oyster bracelet. Now, the secondary market value, we just recently sold one of these for £9,300 for a brand new Polar Dial 2023. You weigh that up against a Batman, for example, on an Oyster bracelet, and that will cost you around £14,000 on the secondary market. So that is over £4,000 more. Why? What, to track an extra time zone? I can't justify that extra chunk of money on the secondary market. So buy the Explorer 2 and then have the funds spare to go and buy an Omega Seamaster as well. That's a perfect arrangement for me, and I wouldn't even consider the GMT now, to be honest with you. Let's take a look at the Datejust line. Of course, the most popular of all would be the Green Dial or Wimbledon Dial Datejusts. For me, there are also 2 other areas of the Datejust line that get overlooked too much, and that is the two-tone 41mm Datejust. I think there are some beautiful combinations there with the slate dial. I think for me the best combination is the one I actually own in my own collection, and this is the Datejust with chocolate dial on a two-tone rose gold and steel bracelet. The 36mm is overlooked far too much. We have this prejudice of 36mm that it's too small, and therefore we discount it. And I need you to set all of your prejudices to one side and really open your mind here. A 36mm watch is like owning a convertible car. You could have the family car, the family SUV that you use all year round. Yes, it's multifunctional, it has good boot space, you can take your kids on the school run, that kind of thing with it. But a convertible you will use in the summer, you will use for a specific purpose. It doesn't need to be practical, it doesn't need to have big boot space. And a 36mm Datejust is like a convertible. You need to have one in your collection. It works because it's different. It works because specifically on the Datejust, the integration of the case with that Jubilee bracelet is perfection. The proportional balance of the 36mm Datejust, which is the classic Datejust, how the Datejust was designed and intended to be, works much better than the 41mm. On the 41mm, the lugs for me are too thick, too wide. So that Jubilee bracelet integrates and flows much better with the 36mm case and wears more of a piece of jewellery. Panda Daytona alternatives then. For me, why pay £24,000 on the secondary market when you can pick up a precious metal two-tone Daytona for around £16,000–17,000 2023. You can get the black dial or the white dial, or also even a gold dial for even less, I think, than £16,000 on the secondary market, brand new. And yes, I understand this argument that, well, the steel is more of a daily wearer, and that's fantastic. But you still get a Daytona with precious metal for considerably less, and I think they'll overlook too much. One thing that I want to mention, I know that we're talking about watches in the current Rolex catalogue, but if you want real rarity and exclusivity within the Daytona line, then two-tone Daytonas actually have an interesting history of dial colorways that you may have never seen before. One particular dial that I think is probably the nicest Daytona of all time is the blue Arabic racing dial. Now, this is quite common and frequently found on the secondary market in the older Daytona reference 116523, I believe it is, the 116503. There are very few of these blue Arabic dials available on this new reference. In fact, they only produced this in 2017, and therefore they're extremely rare. Now, I was offered one of these just a year ago for around £16,000. Now, if you have a look on the secondary market, you can see that they're going, or being advertised on Chrono24 for around £23,000, and I absolutely kicked myself because I knew at the time this is a future collectible, it's a real investment piece, and it is now almost impossible to find one in unpolished condition. They also do slate dials as well, a sort of silvery slate dial on the 116503. I think that's now been discontinued as well. Those are very rare. So there's a lot of choice. There's a lot of choice for less than that £24,000 you would be paying for a Panda Daytona, and actually I think in many ways there are better choices for investment potential, even in this current climate. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed that one and really opened your eyes up to the other offerings in the Rolex collection, because let's be honest, who wants to be the same as everybody else? Who wants to be like every man and his dog wearing a black Submariner day? I think those other 990 choices in the Rolex catalogue really do allow for individuality and expressing your own personal style in more of a way than just the pieces that we see going round and round on Instagram. Please go check out beatthewaitlist-watches.com, and also go check out our sister company StadiFRAMES. That is at the link StadiFRAMES.com if you're a football fan. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.